Hey, what's up guys? Nick here at Envision Prototypes. Over the past few weeks, we put out a number of videos involving the correction of the surface finish of the exterior panels of this custom 40 Ford. Although I tried to position the cameras to capture as much of the work on the panel as possible, there were still a few blind spots, and some of you had questions involving, first question was, how do I know where to position the dolly in relation to the hammer when I'm working? And the second question was, what is an on and off dolly technique that I keep referring to? So in today's video, I'm going to give you a kind of brief rundown and hopefully explain a little bit better as to what I was doing on those panels there. And then after seeing this video, you can go back and kind of fill in the blanks and hopefully get a better understanding as to what was happening. In regards to the first question, how do I know where the dolly is in relation to the hammer? And honestly, I don't know where the dolly is. I can't see through the sheet metal, but I can feel it. As I'm moving the dolly around in the area I'm working, I can feel it with the hammer as to where the dolly is. And you get better with it through mileage. You know, the more you work with it, the better you get. And the second question was, what is an on and off dolly technique? Well, simply, if you grab a dolly, you grab a hammer, you strike the dolly, and you hit the dolly, that's an on dolly technique. If you strike past it, that's an off dolly strike. Now, it sounds really easy until you get to working your panel. Then you have to know which technique to use where. Just grab a piece of sheet metal here. It's just a piece of 22 gauge. And we're going to draw 3 circles on it. One here, and one here. All right. And we'll call this an H, we'll call this an L, and we'll call this a D for dent. H is a high spot, L, low spot. And we're going to start off with a low spot. So say you wheel up a panel, or you have a panel that has a bit of a low spot in it. You can grab your hammer and dolly and work that area. And for a low spot, if you come in from the back and just bump it up, that's not the way to fix it, because you're not correcting the problem. And if you start plenishing, thinking the low spot is the lowest point, you have to bring that up. If you start plenishing the center by hitting it on dolly, you're going to stretch and create a pimple in that center area. So what you have to do is work the outside perimeter by placing the dolly under the outside edge here and striking the outside edge with the hammer. So you basically work this outside perimeter inward, 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 inward until the center comes up to where you need it. Then stop. You're done. So what you're doing is you're stretching by peening the outside perimeter of that low spot. Now that low spot might not be an exact circle. This is just a demonstration. Now in regards to this high spot here, it all depends what kind of high spot you have. If the high spot is way too high, you only gain this through experience. You have to be able to shrink that high down by using a shrinking disc, a torch. Hammer and dolly might not be enough to get you where you need to be. But if it's a slight high area, or say you have to correct the reflections that track across a panel by having an area that's kind of higher than the surrounding areas, well, you would place your dolly on the outside of the high area and slowly work the inside perimeter of that circle inward until you're not striking the dolly, you're striking off the dolly. So the dolly's here, and you're working your way inward, as you're working around it, inward to bring that high down. This high spot is basically an area that looks just like that. So you'd place your dolly, exaggerated of course, you'd place your dolly here, and you'd bring that area downward without touching the center. And that's essentially the way you correct a high area. If you have a really high area, you'd have to shrink it down until you correct it. Or if you don't have all the tools and you really want a lot of work on your hands, then you start stretching the surrounding material, allowing that high to come down. Another way to approach it, probably not the best way, especially if the rest of the panel is in really good shape and you just have one little area that's high. And then we have this spot that has a dent. And what's usually happened is something's fallen against it, something's created a dent, who knows what, who cares? What you know is you have a dent. And if you take that dent and say it's going inward and you strike it outward from the inside by striking the middle, you're not solving your problem, you're creating more issues by stretching more material where you don't need to be stretching it. What you have to do is shrink the outside perimeter, because that metal in this area here is what has stretched when that dent was created. So you would take and you place your dolly on the outside of that and strike from the inside, bringing that upward, working in this perimeter here. Now, if you cannot get in from the inside to strike you with a hammer, you place your dolly on the inside, under the center of your dent, and you tap down around the perimeter surface. this area through here. You tap that down, work it down until you bring the two together. Once they are really close, then you put down the hammer and you grab a slapper or a spoon, depends where you are. And you would take that spoon or slapper and you'd basically place a dolly overlapping the area between where the dent was and the good surrounding metal. And you'd kind of average out, using the slapper, average out the material, smoothing it, allowing the highs to become lower and the lows to become higher. That's all you're doing when you're plenishing. You bring the highs down, you bring the lows up, and you average them out to give you your final finish. So I've set this jig up. So we have our high spot, we have a low spot, and we have our dent. And then we have this squiggly line around here. Now I didn't use a template to transfer one to the other. This is just a demonstration. And then we're going to place our dolly on here, just quick, and we'll get to that in a minute. So again, we have our dolly. We're going to place the dolly depending on the curvature. Like this glass is curved this way, and we could use the curvature of our dolly to fit up inside too. So that fits just like a glove. And without hitting the glass and breaking this tempered window, we're going to start working from the top down, striking the dolly. That's on dolly. Okay, and we're going to work all the way around, working the metal in with less and less striking force as we get to the middle. And you got to watch what's happening with your low spot. You'll see it start coming up. If it comes up too fast, you're hitting it too hard. If it comes up unevenly, you're not applying the consistent force all the way around with your hammer. So once you get it to an area where it looks pretty close, you can stop, switch over to a slapper, bridge the area between the good material and the dent, like so, and strike, bridging the areas, and thereby averaging out the highs and lows and smoothing the panel out. So we get this high spot. It's not too high. It could even be a wave in the panel that you have to correct to get the reflections flowing correctly. What we're going to do, we're going to place our dolly on the outside edge of the high, take our hammer, and strike off of the dolly. There's a dolly there. The hammer is right there on the inside. And you work your way around without striking the dolly. You don't want to create more material here. You need that to come down. So you place your dolly here and you work around the outside edge without touching the middle, because that'll create a dent. The amount of material in the center section is sufficient to achieve a perfect finish. So you don't stretch that, you don't shrink that, you just leave it alone. You work this outside area and bring it down. Okay, and then again, with the slapper, you bridge the two areas and you very gently average out the highs and lows and smooth it out, and you'll be left with a nice finish. Now this dent. So say something fell on here, crushed it down, pushed it in. You would think that this area here is the part that was stretched. That's not right. This material around the perimeter is what has been pulled downward into that level there. So it's stretched this area here. So what we need to do, there might be a crease there or something which you have to take care of, but the material, the problem is in the material around the perimeter here. And that's what we have to shrink. So if that's going down and I cannot get in with a hammer to bump it up while bracing it here, I would place my dolly under the center of that crease and I would strike off dolly the outside edge, just like that. Work all the way around without hitting the dolly, because we don't want to stretch anymore. We want to bring the material into itself, have it shrink, and that will bring that dent upward. Now, there might come a time where, say, you get it really, really close, but you still have that crease there. So you can take and try correcting it from the underside by placing the dolly there, or you would take and you'd place the dolly directly, match up a dolly directly under the center of that crease. And again, you would work the very edge of that crease off dolly. So you would not hit the dolly. You would just strike the surface right here, while bracing or supporting the center crease. And that'll get you into the neighborhood of a almost flat area. And it all depends on how much you want to work the panel. You can get it really close, couple coats of high build primer will get your problem solved, or a little bit of filler. Nothing wrong if it's applied properly. But what we try to do is average out all the highs and lows and smooth it out with the slapper or the spoon. And it might get to a stage where you actually have kind of a high area through here because the material is stretched and you haven't shrunk it enough. You may have to work a larger surface perimeter and with a hammer and dolly. Or you can turn to a shrinking disc and kind of smooth out that outside area, allowing it, not smooth it, but shrink that outside area and bring it down, shrinking the material and having a nice consistent surface throughout the panel. It's a lot of what ifs and a lot of conditions, and you gain that through experience. So for the final time, on dolly is when you have your dolly and you're striking the dolly, let's not break this, with the hammer. Bang, you're striking the dolly. And you'll hear it, you'll hear a sharper pitch. So go back to my other videos and you'll see or hear the sharper pitch and when I actually strike the dolly. And you say, okay, how do you know where you are? Well, sometimes I'll bump the edge of the dolly, and if you hit it too hard, you will create a crease, but I'm not hitting it with that kind of force. You hit the edge of the dolly, oh, that's where I am. You move the dolly over a little bit, and obviously you know where you are. And that's how you can tell. So on dolly, you strike the dolly. Off dolly, you strike past the dolly. That's all there is to it, and it's knowing what to apply and when, and understanding what's happening to your panel. You have to read your panel. You have to see that if you're stretching an area and things aren't going the right way, you stop. You reanalyze the panel, and then you go at it again. So hopefully this little demonstration gave you a little bit more insight into how the on and off dolly technique works and how to plenish and how to kind of work the panel. And the biggest thing is you have to read the panel, you have to see what's going on, not just here, but everywhere. And seeing if you're doing what you're doing is the right thing. You might have to stop, reanalyze your approach, and hit it again. And all that is gained through experience. And the more you work at it, the better you'll get. And you can start by picking up an old fender, ask a buddy who's had a car that he kind of wrecked and he's got a fender, and work with what you have at hand. Or simply grab a piece of sheet metal, put it through the wheel a little bit, create a bit of a high, and see if you can work that down. 99.9% of the time, we have a panel we want to correct, and we'll take the paint and strip it down to bare metal, just so we can see exactly what's going on, because sometimes there's filler behind that paint, and you don't want that extra thickness impeding what you're going to be doing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Go back after you watch this video, watch the other videos on fixing the warpage in a panel after welding and hammer and dolly techniques, and you'll hopefully gain a better understanding as to what I'm doing. A lot of times when we do these videos, I try to set the perspective up as if you're sitting on a stool next to us and you're kind of watching the process happening. And if you have a question, I guess that's why YouTube created the comment section below. Just put it down below and I'll get to it when I get a moment and see if we can answer your question and kind of clarify or do what we need to do just so you have a better grasp of what's going on. Appreciate you guys watching. Hit that little bell up there to get notification next time we have a video coming out, and see you guys next time. Take care.